Well, this is a lesson on many levels. The wolf, the scary other, who you think intends you harm, turns out to be another needy creature like yourself. He's simply a nervous wreck and needs help. We too often spend our days in fear of the wolf hiding in the woods, whatever that symbolizes for us. Terrorists, bureaucrats, or the scary monsters of our dreams. In this story, the part of us that is innocent, that loves candy, that rushes in where angels fear to tread, this is the part of us that will unwittingly introduce us to the most scary wolf of our imagination. In this encounter is God. God energy, wisdom. Well, wolves play an important role in fairy tales. Little Red Riding Hood, that suggestion of sexual transgression, of a child learning too soon adult things. Stories have their power in the archetypes they present to us, in the contradictions they lay before us, the allures and the fears, the possibility they suggest for us in the actions of the heroes, the gods, the monsters, and the animal helpers in them. Human beings have told stories to each other and to our children for millennia, far back into the reaches of time. Sometimes these stories are interpreted simply as cautionary tales, telling us how to behave, telling us to keep our noses clean and be sensible. The story of the 3 little pigs, or the biblical passage about building your house on sand. But the most powerful stories tell us how to meet God face to face and survive. From a Talmudic story. One night, 4 rabbinim, 4 rabbis, were visited by an angel who awakened them and carried them to the 7th vault of the 7th heaven. There they beheld the sacred wheel of Ezekiel. Somewhere in the descent from paradise to earth, one rabbi, having seen such splendor, lost his mind and wandered frothing and foaming into the end of his days. The second rabbi was extremely cynical. Oh, I just dreamed Ezekiel's wheel, that was all. Nothing really happened. The third rabbi carried on and on about what he had seen, for he was totally obsessed. He lectured and would not stop with how it was all constructed and what it all meant. And in this way he went astray and betrayed his faith. The fourth rabbi, who was a poet, took a paper in hand and a reed and sat near the window writing song after song, praising the evening dove, his daughter in her cradle, and all the stars in the sky. And he lived his life better than before. We have this morning 2 stories of women from the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures. Ruth, who is famous for her love of and loyalty to her mother-in-law, saying so poetically, "Whither thou goest, I will go. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God." Hers is a story of a woman, a stranger in a culture where she, as a woman, is powerless, less than a slave. When Naomi sells her dead son's land, her daughter-in-law, her son's widow Ruth, goes with the land as if she were a barn or a herd of cattle. Ruth is a wise young woman. She's not prideful. She knows she needs to find a secure position that will ensure her own survival, as well as that of her mother-in-law. When the boss takes a liking to her, she presses her advantage and asks him to marry her. By the customs and laws of the time, he receives Naomi's son's land and his widow, Ruth, to marry. She has succeeded. And fortunately, her new husband is a kind and generous man who treats his servants and dependents well. Ruth, in this situation, this culture, might have ended up a pauper, a prostitute, a beggar, living in the worst of circumstances. But she has made a way for herself. The other woman in our readings is not even named. She is the Syrophoenician woman, also a foreigner. We have to try to imagine the country Jesus lived in. It's a little bit like Uptown, incredibly diverse. People, lots of people from somewhere else, lots of different languages spoken. Well, this woman, the Syrophoenician woman, is bothering the disciples. She is nagging them. She won't go away. She begs for help from Jesus, this new phenom, this famous healer, for her daughter. He tries to brush her off with a rather arrogant rebuff. His work, he says, lies with the people of Israel. But this foreign woman challenges him. She really gets in his face. And what is his response? Jesus is surprised, and he accepts her chastisement. So he says, in essence, "You're right. Why should we confine our work to Jews? We are here to heal everyone. Why not?" This woman has a lot of cojones, as they say. It's almost like Abraham arguing with God about Sodom. Well, he said, what if there were 50 good people there? Would you destroy it? What about 10? These two women, in a way, illustrate the two sides of a woman that Clarissa Pinkola Estes is talking about in her book. Ruth is the quiet, calm, outward side, the one who lives with the realities thrust on her. The Syrophoenician woman is like the wild woman, aroused by her daughter's illness, by her need, by her desperation. In her desperation, she is willing to challenge the status quo, to face the scary, the divine, face to face. We used to have leaders who stood out, without whom we would not have moved forward. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. But perhaps now we are entering an era beyond individual heroes. These uprisings in Arab nations are leaderless. No one person is at their head, visible and charismatic. As I was thinking about International Women's Day, and I was looking for something emblematic of women around the world, I didn't remember any individual women who stood out as I have noticed in past years. They're out there, I'm sure. But I was more struck by the mass movements of today, and in particular by that image of those women in the Ivory Coast. I was moved imagining them marching, holding up and waving those leafy branches as they walked, singing and chanting for peace. These are women who have rediscovered their inner wild woman. They no longer allow the rules, the tyrants, to make them cower, to make them huddle indoors in fear. And last Sunday, when we were talking together upstairs, and we were sharing, however briefly, our beliefs, our values, our gifts, our dreams for this church, we were engaged in the kind of work that makes it possible for a group of people to do things together. As we talk together about what is of greatest importance to us, to each of us, we will find ourselves growing into a cohesive whole with common dreams that we can begin to put into action. I've been thinking a lot about collective action, about how we can better care for ourselves and each other in these difficult and stressful times. The newsletter that some of you may have seen already outlined one way we can begin to do that. In an online chat, I was reading about the President's Commission to address the budget deficit. This is what I do in my spare time. Well, there was one person who waxed gloomy over the massive cuts to Social Security and Medicare that they were recommending, and other draconian measures that were proposed. And she suggested, perhaps this is the only way that the collective unconsciousness will be reshaped, because it is simply not possible for individuals, qua individuals, to survive this austerity. The virtues of communal living, sharing, commitment will become more and more obvious. And until the ghost of the autonomous individual is laid to rest, not much can be done. The name Ruth comes from the Hebrew word reut, meaning friend. Our culture, our institutions, like the banks regarding foreclosure of people's homes, have become too ruthless, hard-hearted, unfeeling, showing no mercy. That is, unfriendly. But we as people don't have to echo this cruel stance. We are aware that we are not simply autonomous individuals. We are interdependent. We need one another. The sheep need the sheepdog. The wolf in this story needs the sheep, and the dog needs them both. And there's no shame to needing one another. It's a fact, and it's a blessing. We can know God through our love for one another. We don't impoverish each other. We enrich one another's lives. Together, we are so much more. God is still speaking, as the UCC slogan has it. And God speaks through our collective voices if we can truly listen to one another. Adrienne Rich, and I read a small bit of that poem. She's a woman, she's black, she's gay, in a world run by people very different from herself. And she laments this ruthlessness and the destruction that comes with it. But she honors that creative spirit that counterbalances destruction. This is what I am, she writes, watching the spider rebuild. Patiently, they say, but I recognize in her impatience my own. The passion to make and make again where such unmaking reigns. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world.